Welcome to Take Two with Freddy. Real talk about second chances, real life, and the power of rewriting your story. I'm Freddy Freundlich, entrepreneur, mentor, and storyteller. And here's the deal. If I didn't walk it, I don't talk it. Each week, we spend a little time together, laughing, reflecting, and hopefully walking away a little more aware, a little more grounded, and maybe even a little more control of what really matters. So, what's on my mind today? Heroes. You know, it's a funny thing how our definition of a hero changes as we get older. When I was a kid, the ideas of heroes were pretty simple. Heroes wore capes and they flew through the sky and they always fought the bad guys. Heroes also always knew the right thing to do. My heroes were Superman, Batman, and all those other larger than life characters that filled comic books and television screens. And then there were real life heroes. They were the athletes, the soldiers, the astronauts, people who in fact seemed bigger than life. People who I would dream about that I wanted to be just like them. But now, decades later, I find myself asking a different question. Were they really heroes, or were they simply people I admired? People that as a kid I looked up to. I wonder if these were the people whom I had projected my own hopes and dreams. And this all got me to thinking about something else entirely. And that is the difference between heroes, heroic acts, and influencers. And what I now understand is that they're not necessarily the same thing. Before recording this episode, I decided to look up the definition of a hero. According to Wikipedia, a hero is a real person or fictional character who, in the face of danger, combats adversity through feats of ingenuity, courage, and strength. So that's a pretty impressive definition. But I'd like to share with you guys what I think. I think a hero is someone who rises to the occasion when the occasion demands it. Not necessarily because they're special or because they're perfect. I also don't think any hero woke up that particular morning planning to become a hero. It's just when the moment arrived, they did the right thing, especially when it was hard and it was dangerous, especially when there was a cost to it. You know, in the part of the world I live right now, it is something that I do think about quite a lot. We hear stories almost daily of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. The soldier who risked his or her life to save others. The medic who runs towards danger while everyone else is running away. The civilian, and there are plenty of them, who step forward in a moment of crisis. These people don't necessarily set out to become heroes, but in a defining moment, they rise to the occasion. And that is what makes their story so powerful. Think about a young soldier who throws himself on a grenade to save his fellow soldiers, or the bystander who sees someone drowning and jumps into the water without thinking about their own safety. Whether they survive or not, we call them heroes, and rightly so. But here's where things get interesting. Let's say that 21-year-old soldier survives, and let's say he goes on to live another 50, 60 years. And during those years, he makes mistakes, like most of us do. Maybe he makes some serious mistakes. Maybe he cheats on his taxes. He has a bad marriage and gets divorced. He struggles with addiction. And maybe he even ends up in prison. What then? Does he stop being a hero? Or did he simply remain what he always was, which was simply a human being? I think that we often confuse a heroic act with a perfect person. And those, my friends, are two very different things. An heroic act definitely deserves recognition. Always. But it doesn't magically transform someone into a flawless human being because heroes are still human. Other than, of course, the fictitious ones like Batman or Robin. But now we're talking about you and I, human beings. These heroes, they still have fears and weaknesses. And like all of us, they still make bad decisions at times. And they still need second chances. And that's where I think we get ourselves into trouble because we have a habit of putting people on pedestals. And then we're shocked when they fall off. But the reality is that they never were supposed to be up there in the first place. Again, we need to differentiate the difference between an heroic act and a hero. And I believe this whole problem starts when we're very young. As children, we naturally look up to people. We look up to athletes, to musicians, to actors, other public figures, and this is understandable. All of us, but specifically children, need role models. We need examples. We need people who inspire us. But eventually, and it's always really hard, but eventually we're hit with this cold, hard fact, and it does really hurt sometimes. And that is that they're just people. When you find out that the athlete who inspired not just you, but millions of other people gets arrested, the actor who we loved and we thought was really Mr. or Ms. Perfect, and then we heard they said something really stupid. You know, sometimes they seem to have all the answers until they don't. You know, the person that we thought had all the answers to everything, and then we find out they're just like us. They got plenty of problems of their own. And then, of course, we hear from them the predictable response, hey, I'm only human. Well, of course you are. But you're only telling us that now, after we discovered it. But why are we surprised? What else could you be but human? Surprise isn't that they are, in fact, human. The surprise is that we forget and we have to be reminded. Now, to be fair, I do think there's a responsibility that comes with influence. If millions of young people look up to you, whether you ask for that responsibility or not, you have an obligation to try and be your best self. Now, nobody expects perfection, but influence does carry weight, which means words matter, action matters, examples matter. And now this brings me to something which I'm still trying to wrap my head around, and that is the rise of the influencer. I have to admit to you guys, I still don't fully understand the influencer culture. Again, I went to Wikipedia and they told me that an influencer is someone who can shape the attitudes, behaviors, or decisions of others through authority, knowledge, position, or their relationship with an audience. Okay, fair enough. But if that's the definition, then influencers have really existed forever. Parents influence their children, teachers influence students, coaches influence athletes, mentors influence clients, friends influence friends. Okay, we can go on and on. I think, though, the big difference today is simply scale. Social media has given everyone a microphone. And some people have built audiences of millions, even tens of millions. And while sometimes these audiences are built on expertise or experience, many times they're built on nothing more than being entertaining or controversial, or they're good looking or lucky enough to go viral. And all of a sudden, suddenly someone really a no one, just your average Joe or Mary out there who has really nothing to contribute to the world. Suddenly, this person has influence over millions of people. And they have no real expertise in the subject they're discussing. For me, this is very uncomfortable because, as you know, my personal philosophy is very simple. If I don't walk it, I don't talk it. I really don't want to teach you something that I haven't experienced. I don't want to pretend to have experience in a certain area, which I don't. Now, I'm also human and I obviously have opinions, but I need to separate my opinions from my knowledge. And that's why on this podcast, I tend to tell a lot of stories. I talk about my stories, my mistakes, my second and third and fourth and fifth and so on chances, because that's what I actually know. That's what I can hopefully get across to you guys. And again, don't get me wrong, you don't have to be an expert in something to have an opinion, but as listeners, maybe we should be more careful who we listen to. I know with myself, there are many times people will come up to me and ask my advice. And I have an opinion about almost everything. And in the past, I was very opinionated. And in some respects, maybe I still am. But I have learned, and I have no embarrassment saying this, if I didn't walk it, then I don't know. Go speak to a person who has expertise in that particular thing. The best advice I can give anybody, other than something that I really do know about, is find the right person. Find that person who has what you are looking for and ask them how they got it. And you know what? If you want to be an influencer, then yes, go find the best influencer out there, no matter what they know. Because one thing they do now know is how to be an influencer. But I digress here a bit. As I said, maybe we should just be a little more careful who we listen to. And we should perhaps be a bit more careful about who we elevate. Because influence without wisdom can be very dangerous. But you know, guys, the part of all this that really got me thinking and why I decided to use this topic for this particular episode is I was discussing with someone why it is that someone may get a second chance by people and others don't. Why is it that some people are forever defined by their worst mistakes, and yet others seem to get an endless pass? They always have an opportunity to reinvent themselves. Think about it for a moment. You know, one person does something stupid at 15 years old. They steal a car, perhaps. Maybe they got involved with drugs. And maybe they, yes, made some terrible decisions. Then they spend the next 50, 60 years trying to be the best human being they can be. They help others, they raise a family, they contribute to society. Yet many people still will define them by what happened when they were 15 years old. That's all they see. That's all they remember. Meanwhile, you have someone who is repeatedly disappointing their friends, their family, everyone around them. But somehow that person continues to receive forgiveness and that second chance. Now, maybe it's because they're famous, successful, wealthy, or maybe it's just because they happen to agree with your worldview. Why is this? I think it's because heroes, villains, and influencers are often judged subjectively, not objectively, subjectively. We see what we want to see. We remember what confirms our own beliefs. We tend to forgive people we like, and we condemn people we don't. And this, I feel, is true whether we're talking about politics, celebrities, athletes, business leaders, or even our own neighbors, even our family. I find personally, the older I get, the less interested I am in labels. When I think about a hero, a villain, an influencer, a celebrity, what I'm really interested in is, what is this person's current character? Who are they now? How are they treating people now? What are they doing now when no one is watching? And did they learn from their mistakes? Did they grow? Do they now take responsibility of what they're doing now and what they did in the past? Are they contributing something positive in the world? You know, a great example I have of this, and I try and make this podcast as uncontroversial as possible. And I'm bringing up a controversial subject, but I'm not taking a side on it. But when I think about the death penalty, specifically in the United States, I will tell you a challenge I have. And again, I'm not discussing whether the death penalty is valid or not. What I'm discussing is, because of the way the system works with all its various appeal system, the murderer kills somebody when they're 20 or 30 years old. Then they may be executed when they're actually 50, 60, even older than that. So even if I agree that the person should have been executed for their crime, they're not the same person anymore. Now, they could be worse. I'm not saying that, everything is equal, but I am saying that people do change. If you're going to teach someone a lesson or punish someone, you need to do it relative to the transgression. I can't punish my child for leaving his muddy, dirty shoes on my beautiful new carpet 5 years after the fact. It doesn't make sense. So by the same logic, just because my child did something which really upset me 5 years ago, why would I even think about it now? What I'm interested in is who this person is now. And I guess that's really the real test. Not whether someone was perfect or was famous or had followers, but wherever they are right now. Are they trying to become a better version of themselves? And that's what second chances for me are all about. Every one of us, if we've been around a while, have moments we are proud of. And at the same time, every one of us has moments that we'd rather forget. We've all been a hero in someone's story, and unfortunately, we've also been a villain in someone else's. And the truth is, folks, we may have been to that same person, both the hero and the villain. That's the truth of being human. Life isn't a comic book. Very few people are all good or all bad. We're complicated. We're messy. We're constantly a work in progress. And maybe that's exactly why second chances do matter. Because if we define people exclusively by their worst moment, it's not good for any of us. Not for you, not for me, no one. The truth is that growth requires room, and so does forgiveness. Forgiveness requires room. Redemption requires room. And obviously, second chances require room. So maybe the question isn't whether someone is a hero. Maybe the better question would be, what did they do when life called on them? Did they rise to the occasion? Were they there to help someone? Did they make a difference? And if they did, and then they later stumbled, as by the way, all of us do, did they get back up? Did they learn from their mistake? Did they grow? Because this is the kind of hero worth admiring. Not the flawless hero or the fictional hero, but the regular person. The person who will fall down, but will get themselves back up. Someone who learns from experience and keeps moving forward. And folks, that pretty much sums it up. That, for me, is today's Take Two. I want to add, remember, your worst day doesn't define you, and neither does your best day. What defines you is what you do next, what you do today. And one of the things I want to thank you for is what you did today was spending a little time with me. And I am hoping that this episode made you think about giving yourself a second chance. Or perhaps you were thinking about someone else you know who deserves a second chance. So I hope you'll share it with them, and please like and subscribe. Anyway, until next time, this is Freddy, and remember, if I didn't walk it, I don't talk it.